Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us, as always, to talk all things markets, University of Missouri's Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hey, it's great to see you on this Friday, Megan.
On a very brisk Friday, it sounds like you've had some pretty hard freezes or heavy frost this week in your state. It's been very, very chilly in this part of the country. And I think some growing season for alfalfa and hay are probably wrapped up as well.
That's right. We're getting to the fall season in full bore here.
Hopefully for folks like my dad who have been struggling to wrap up harvest, the ground will freeze enough that he can finally get things done, because it's been a struggle, I know, for several farmers throughout our coverage in our listening area.
Yep, for sure. It's been a long fall for some folks out there. That's certainly the case.
All right, let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk trade today. We're going to talk jobs as well. We'll preview what's coming up next week. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, Megan, this week on the cattle side, cash cattle were $1.80 higher on the week. Those feeder cattle markets were anywhere from steady to $2 lower on the week. On the future side, the December live cattle futures contract closed up $2.50 on the week. And the January feeder cattle contract was up $3.60 on the week. That strength in feeder cattle in particular came in part as the December corn futures was down 16.25 cents on the week. On the beef side, the choice box beef price was up $4.40 again, higher this week. That was on strength across all of those components in the box. On the hog side, cash barrel gilt prices were basically unchanged on the week. We did see a 50-cent gain in the December lean hog futures contract, and the pork cutout value also gained this week, up nearly $2.60. Both hams and bellies were higher on the week.
It's been nice to talk a little bit about some higher prices as we look at at least the cattle side of things. It seems like the cash hog market is still struggling quite a bit.
Yeah, that's right. So we didn't get any dead cat bounce this week in those cash markets. And I guess the only thing we can say is it didn't keep going lower. Let's hope we can get some more upside price strength here in the coming week.
All right, let's talk slaughter numbers. We've been kind of keeping an eye on those and to see how things measure up as we take a look at this week. Really a little bit of a decline on the cattle side of things.
Yeah, that's right. So a run of 650,000 head is expected by USDA for the week ending November 6th. That's down 18,000 head from last week. It's down 2,000 head from where we were a year ago. On the hog side of the equation, a run of 2.611 million head this week on the hog side. That's up 60,000 hogs from where we were a week ago, but still down 87,000 head from a year ago. You know, as you look at those year ago numbers, you know, we're finally getting maybe towards the end of what was 2020 being so driven by the early shutdowns that we saw due to COVID-19.
All right, today we're going to talk monthly trade data, one of my favorite reports for us to get into. And as we take a look, another really solid month for beef exports.
Yeah, that's right, Megan. You know, so we got the September data out now. So 289 million pounds of beef exports to U.S. beef exports to destinations. That's up 50 million pounds from where we were a year ago. It's up more than 60 million pounds relative to the 2015 to 2019 average. You can answer that up pretty simply by saying a lot of it went to China, up nearly 30 million pounds. So year to date, just to make sure we stay focused here, so 2.58 billion pounds of U.S. beef exports year to date. That's 21% higher than where we were a year ago. And for China, they're up 85% relative to a year ago. So a lot of that has been very much due to China. On the pork side, a little different story here. So 510 million pounds of pork exports in September of this year. That was actually down 35 million pounds from 2020. It is up 83 million pounds from the 2015 to 2019 average. But when you look at that down 35 relative to a year ago, you can then just point to China. So China down 75 million pounds September to September, being much of the drag. So even though Mexico was up 60 million pounds, the drag going to China was more than offset what was happening in Mexico. Year to date, we're down 0.8%. So we just didn't see the same kind of growth that we got in 2020 relative to this year. Again, driven by what's China down 38%, more than offsetting what was Mexico year to date up nearly 30%. So again, I don't want to say anything too weak, even on the pork side. We're holding on. We just didn't see the kind of growth that we got used to in 2020, at least.
When we look at this, we know China is going to continue to be a factor. How much does it come into play with if we see them start to look at other markets for their products? Do we still continue to see this upside potential for beef headed into China as we go into 2022? And how much caution do we need to proceed looking at 2022 in terms of pork exports as well?
Yeah, so I am a little cautious because of what we see happening in China. And I think there's a few things at play here that is worth some discussion. Number one, what happens to the phase one China deal now that we get beyond 2021? It's still not 100% clear, where we end up at the end of the day. The Chinese decide they want to go somewhere else. I'm not sure we can really necessarily claim they should continue this phase one agreement with us. So there's trade issues in terms of just how China responds. But for a minute, I want to remind us competitors matter here. So we've been and I'm going to point at Australia here for a minute. You look back at 2012 kind of being the high mark for Australia, beef cow inventory at a little more than 13.5 million head. They're now at 2021 fallen to what was roughly 10 million head. So almost down every year. And a lot of that was some dry weather that was affecting them, especially of late. But projections for 2022 suggest they'll be up 500,000 to 600,000 head of beef cows and be producing more beef production. So maybe our competitors get a little stronger for us. And to me, that's both Japan and China in particular. But if you look at the 2020, 2021, July 1, June 30 year here for a minute, U.S., so beef exports to Japan, South Korea, and China were up about 160,000 metric tons in 2021 relative to 2019, 2020. And exports from Australia to those same markets were down almost the same amount. So we clearly gained market share relative to Australia. Do they get that market share back this year? I do worry. And the last thing I'll say relative to beef is, we're now getting to the point this year where last year was really strong beef exports to China. Can we keep growing, or do we kind of do what was happening in pork this year, right? We don't go down, but we just kind of, level off. I think those are, of course, issues. And to the pork question you ask, I'll keep saying, tell me what happens to Africa swine fever and additional outbreaks in China. That they'll certainly import pork where they need it, but they may need less in 2022 than they needed in 2021.
One last question as it relates to trade in the global trade picture. I believe China has formally or is making steps to join the CPTPP, which the U.S. exited. How does that change or potentially impact the global market for us delivering to our customers, and also for us in general with trade in that part of the world?
Yeah, so I think it could have some impact. And for me, I'll point back to in Australia as well that might have some tariff advantages to us in some of these markets that could make it a little tougher for us to fill some of the empty space there. So landed U.S. prices might not look as attractive as landed Australia prices might look for some of these products. So we'll have to wait and see, but that's certainly them joining or potentially joining that agreement is of interest to us. We don't want to let that get off the radar screen.
All right, let's talk domestic demand. Jobs report came in today. How do we take a look at this, and what does that mean potentially for us as we talk about consumers and continuing to see their strong demand for U.S. beef and pork?
Yeah, so we got some good news out of that report today. So job non-farm payrolls increased by 531,000 jobs in October. That exceeded pre-report averages by about 100,000 individuals. So more jobs than we anticipated. Unemployment rate fell to 4.6%, so down more than pre-report would have suggested as well. That's frankly good news, Megan, after the last couple of reports have not exceeded expectations, and in fact have been a drag. So it appears as we've seen some COVID-19 cases begin to fall in a number of places around the country, that we're seeing jobs come back. All good news for us in terms of what we're doing on the meat demand side. And I'll keep saying, we're pushing record retail prices at consumers. We need them to have more money in their pockets as they move ahead. So all positive, I guess, in my mind, in terms of what we got today in the jobs report.
Sounds great. Scott, as we look ahead to next week, fairly busy Friday for us. What reports are we watching?
Yeah, so next Tuesday we'll get the USDA WASDE report, so the monthly report out. It'll be interesting to see where they peg things for us. And then we get retail prices and finish the week with consumer sentiment.
Sounds great. We will see you then.
Have a great weekend, Megan.
You too. To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments there while you're subscribing. And for all the great podcasts that Brownfield offers, go to brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.